to the first episode of The Noise Report. This is a music podcast hosted by me, Justin Horn, and my co-host,
Trey Graciani.
All right, so a little bit of background. This is a podcast where we both give each other an album that we'd like the other to review, and we go ahead and go in depth, talk about the individual tracks, things we liked, things we disliked. And then at the end of the podcast, we give each other something to review for next week.
Yeah, and if you'd like to join in and join in the discussion and know what we're talking about, you can also listen to the albums that we suggest and actually understand the things that we're saying. So yeah, how about we start now?
Today, our albums that we are going to be covering are the album End Position by Street Sects. I really need to enunciate that so people don't get confused. It is not sex. It is Street Sects.
CTS.
And the other album is an album by Toe titled
Got you.
The Book About My Idle Plot on a Vague Anxiety. Kind of a mouthful there, but I guess we're going to start with the Street Sects album, yeah?
Yep. Just a little information on that. Street Sects End Position, released September 16th, 2016. The debut album from them. Their genre is rock, noise, experimental.
Yeah, kind of like a noise punk outfit. Maybe a little industrial in there as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they're just a duo from Austin, Texas. I just have that written down. Thought I'd point it out.
Yeah, a lot of their music is based on personal experience from their vocalist, as he is a recovering crack addict, which is a fun fact that a lot of people may or may not know.
I wouldn't have ever guessed.
So a lot of their music deals with some darker themes, which we'll now go into.
Yes.
So I've got it organized a bit by tracks here.
Yep.
And the first track on the album is And I Grew Into Ribbons. And this is really kind of a wild intro and really gets you prepared for the rest of the album.
Yeah,
Sets the tone.
Definitely set it very well.
So there's a good mix of clean and screamed vocals all over the track. There's some really crazy samples in there as well. Like there's like some frightened sounding people and glass breaking.
Yeah, I have written down here that I really liked how the intro kind of misleads you almost when it starts out, and it hits you into that like incredibly pumpy bass rhythm that comes after it. Super fucking catchy, the whole thing.
Yeah, it's got some good grooves on that track.
I do admit one of my main issues, I'm not really a noise listener. I don't listen to a lot of noise music like this. So a constant theme I had was just the fact that the vocal effects are almost too grindy for me. I can almost never understand what this guy's saying.
Yeah.
But I guess that kind of comes with the genre. You can't really help that one.
A little bit. One of the things that I actually noticed when I was listening to it is that this track seemed to go by really, really fast. And it's one of the probably longer songs on the album. It's like 3 minutes and 30, something like that.
Yeah, something around there.
And it felt like it was already done at like the minute 50 at the minute 50 point, and it was still just going. It just felt like it was going really, really fast, a lot faster than it was, which can be a good thing, can be a bad thing, depending on your tastes.
Yeah. Once it hit that midway point where it like transitions, it kind of leads into that intro misleading thing that I just said. Like the transition felt almost off to me, but then in the end, it like all kind of came together really well.
Yeah.
And really like sets the tone, like you said, for the whole thing.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of forethought put into making this as the opener.
Yeah.
So I've got some notes on the lyrics as well, because Lyrics Genius is my friend for this album. So the lyrics, in keeping theme with setting the tone for the rest of the album, the lyrics allude to depression, suicide, and dissatisfaction with daily life, which is going to be a common theme present throughout the entire album. This is not your grandma's noise album, if you will. Now then, second song in the track listing, assuming you're done with that first one.
Yeah, no, I think I said what I needed to say.
Second song in the track listing clocks in at around 1:52. It's called "Copper in the Slots," and one of the first notes that I noted on this track is that the vocals are kind of gothy in nature, kind of like a typical post-punk style a little bit, and very theatrical. This is really where you get a good sense of the cleans on the album.
Yeah, the building in in this track was just incredible. Especially the intro. That build up is like phenomenal.
Yes, it's pretty wild. I like how the drum machine punctuates things on this track. And there's another good lot of very interesting and kind of unsettling samples which make an appearance on this track, as with the previous track. So one thing that I noted about this track is that it just, for me personally, this song resonated for me. I really enjoyed the style to it. It was a little bit different from the first track, and it didn't overstay its welcome either. As I said, it's only about 1:50 some seconds long, so it was there. It was present. It was powerful. It kicked ass, and then it was gone.
Yeah. So some things I thought about it. With all the super strong buildups and how much it was like working up towards something, the fact that there wasn't a payoff kind of let me down a little bit. I was really hoping for something just to like grab my ass and take me to town, but it didn't really, which I felt a little like it was a bittersweet kind of, because I love shit like that where it like kind of misleads you completely. But then again, who doesn't love a good just fucking rockin' like drop, to say the least?
Yeah, a little bit of a cock tease on this one, I
Definitely.
guess you could say.
The synth usage too, the electronic synths, especially they felt angelic almost, like you said, how it's like theatric.
Yes,
like that shit was super nice.
And then again, I've got another note on the lyrics here, and this track seems to focus on the death of a young person that was close to the narrator. And he notes that there will be no parades or no one visiting the grave or anything like that for the death of this young person, marking them as pretty much irrelevant. Again, keeping in tone with the very nihilistic lyrics that we've come to expect from the first track.
Fits real nice.
Yeah. And just as a final note, this ended up being one of my favorite songs on the album. I can't exactly explain why. It's a difficult feeling to explain, as favoritism is one of those weird things.
Yeah.
You either love it or you hate it, and there's not a whole lot of reasons for a lot of it.
All right. Got anything else to say on that one?
No, I'm good on that one.
Cool. We'll head on over to the next song then. That one is called "In Defense of Resentment." Super fucking the spoken vocal part on this track really fucking like resonated with me. Super fucking just like almost scary, I guess.
Yeah.
It felt like it really like hit a nerve.
Yeah, it's it was a really, really solid choice of sampling for sure.
Yeah. I don't know how much I liked the like movie style sampling as much.
Yeah.
That I hear that shit a lot in like experimental indie shit, and it's just it kind of like irked me the wrong way, because I feel like these guys could do well enough on their own without it.
Yeah, it seems a little cliched.
Yeah, because I hear a lot of songs that just sample like movie things and they add the like VHS like filtered low pass on it that make it feel like it's from running on a grain,
or something like that. This sample definitely felt a little bit more solid, and almost like it could have been an interview taken off the streets and just washed through like a 50s mic. I can't really think of any sort of movie that would have something like this sort of sample in it off the top of my head. I'm sure there's something out there, but nothing that immediately comes to mind. So yeah, let's see here. Oh yeah, so after the sample, there's the drum machine really kicks in.
Oh, fucking that part.
It was just, it's a very intense, like immediate snap to the drum machine, and while that's going, there's a mix of really low and high pitched drones, like kind of playing off of each other, bouncing back and forth. And later in the track, we get some more wild samples of sounds like panicked or frightened people. Yep. Again, keeping in theme, so at least we know they're consistent.
Yeah, I have written down that the off rhythm drum variants were a really nice change of pace from like the other tracks, which had pretty standard, like just straight grindy drums. This one really added a good change of pace,
a little more flair to it.
Yeah, and then that backing guitar melody that plays.
Yeah,
towards it's so good.
It's excellent.
Really shows that they've got like the technical skill behind everything.
Yes, it shows that they know what they're doing. And again, there's another solid mix of both screamed and the clean vocals. So if you like your harsh vocals and you like your clean vocals,
I know I do.
You'll get a little of both on this track. And I've got another note on the lyrics here because that's who I am. I'm the big lyrics nerd.
Lyric
you got
boy.
Me.
Justin, the rise of lyric.
So the themes on this track include personal fears, and also the narrator, presumably this is coming directly from the lead singer's perspective, his inability to actually empathize with positive emotions from other people. And he considers people that are upbeat and positive all the time to be fake. And he's the narrator is clearly bitter, but also admits that he is entirely at home with being bitter and disillusioned with the rest of these people.
Sounds about right.
All right, so the fourth track on the album, spoilers a little bit. This is my favorite track on the album.
Okay.
By a long shot. This is Featherweight Hate. This track kicks off with a sample of what sounds like somebody getting stabbed or something.
Yeah, the whole horror movie kind of vibe that plays off of it.
And then it's just like somebody breathing.
Dude, the
into
ASMR breathing made me
it's
so uncomfortable.
There's just like some wild breathing into a bag or something. And then it kicks off into some droney sounds and a pretty standard drum machine beat, which is one of my little irks about the track. It is fairly standard.
There's a lot of like extraneous sampling. I feel it almost feels like too much.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at that as being part of the noise aesthetic.
Yeah,
but,
it's kind of. I don't say I listen to a lot of noise music, so I can't say that's not what every noise song sounds like. But just coming from my personal opinion, a little bit too much of it.
Yeah.
But aside from that, there's a really good disharmonic motif that played that they kept reusing throughout that one that really just hit that spot.
Mm-hmm.
It was really well done on that part. The whole I don't want to use like horror movie, but the whole disharmonic vibe going on to that entire song.
Yeah.
Super, super nice.
There's some little
I
I have it down here as 16-bit notes, but I'm sure that's wrong. It's just like some little sparklings of synth over the top that I think help create that disharmony there. And I gotta say, this is probably my favorite vocal performance on the entire album. There's no screamed vocals here. It's all cleans. A lot of times that gets buried, unfortunately, I would say, beneath just a wall of noise. But I mean, that kind of comes with the genre.
That's kind of like my biggest irk with the whole album is just I wanted to hear the vocals a bit more.
Yeah,
because this guy, he's got a great singing voice and a really good like screaming voice, so being able to understand him a bit more without having to look up the lyrics would have been super nice.
Yeah. Speaking of the lyrics, great transition.
Wow. On that segue.
This is some of my favorite lyrical moments on the album, as it actually tells a bit of a story. Of course, keeping in tone, it's a horribly dark story that's really depressing, but it's essentially about the narrator's brother being arrested for something in relation to alcoholism, as it mentions his issues with drinking in the first couple lines. and he gets arrested and put behind bars for 10 years. And then the narrator is living in fear, essentially, for when his brother gets out, as he's changed as a person, apparently. And the closing lyrics of the track are essentially the narrator waiting with a shotgun for his brother to come home. So that's very pleasant,
Sounds like my typical Tuesday night.
Yeah, sounds like it indeed. And then track 5 is titled Our Lesions. And that is not legions, but lesions, as in cuts and wounds and stuff. So very pleasant vibe already.
Yes, very continuing off that one. Let's see. Some of the stuff I have written down about this one. I felt like this is one of my most I was really half and half on this song, because half of the song I loved to pieces. The other half I felt really iffy about. I think it has the least musical engagement out of almost up until about the halfway point, when it gets that key change, and then you start getting the backing vocals and the build up, and then all of a sudden it becomes this huge hit. But I think the entire beginning of the song is just a huge cock tease.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's a lot of sour notes on that first part that just kind of really pulse and make it a bit of a tedious listening experience if you aren't familiar with it. As the second, you're not going to be ready for the second part, as you're just going to hear the first part and be like, oh, this sounds awful, I'm just going to skip it.
Yeah. But yeah, once 4 minutes comes in, around the 4 minute mark, when the vocals actually hit, that shook me. I was like, holy shit, I was not ready for that. And
there's actually some very clever use of guitar passages on this track in the latter half, which is fairly uncommon for this album. Most of the time it's just samples of noise and stuff like that, but they make good use of guitars on the second half of the track. And the lyrics I have down in my notes here that the lyrics to this song are basically the criminal version of Your New Twin-Sized Bed by Death Cab for Cutie. So if you're familiar with that song, it's basically about somebody that can't find love and they're lonely in the world.
Sounds like me.
It's like that song, except the person of mention in the song is also a convicted felon, and they hate everyone around them. So it's like that. There's even mention of a mattress, which is kind of a nice
good little tie-in there.
Excellent tie-in. Very pleasant.
All right. Moving on. The next song, Victims of Nostalgia. I didn't have too much to say about this song. I think this is my least favorite song on the album. I wrote down that it was probably kind of forgettable, if anything, out of everything that comes around it, because Coming Up is my favorite song that I liked, and then behind it was a song that had a huge mood switch for me that really shook me, and then this one came out and I just didn't really feel the same things as I was feeling in the other ones. It almost felt like a sensory overload to me, even though it's noise, you can't really help that.
I would have to agree with that. I think the strongest part of this track is actually the sample that opens the track up. It's essentially some guy talking about how the people that he is speaking to need to get rent money, or else all their precious stuff is going to end up on the street. And I thought it was almost a humorous sample and added a little bit of levity to this otherwise incredibly dark album. So that's really all I can say on this track. Otherwise, it was very forgettable, which is kind of a shame given the rest of the track.
Because the rest of the songs on the album are shit that'll stick with you, but this one it had really good switching of moods. There were good transitional parts, but aside from that, I don't really even right now, I literally just listened to the album before coming in and I can barely remember what it sounded like.
Yeah, the only things that really stick with you on this track are the intro samples and the ending lyrics where he's just screaming, "I won't fucking live like that."
Yeah.
everything else is very much forgettable. Although I will say the ending vocals where he's like, I won't fucking live like that, are very distressed and made me incredibly uncomfortable, which I'm guessing that was what they set out to do, and they did an excellent job of that.
Yeah.
It really sounded like he was panicked in distress and just like on the verge of breaking, which was very, very moving, I guess.
Yeah.
And then we're on to track 7, which is Black Den.
Ooh, that's Din, D-I-N, not Den.
And
I have this one written down as the literal hype song.
The hype song.
This
hype
whole
song.
To me was just hype, like the epitome of hype, or epitome. How the fuck you pronounce that word? Yeah. The only thing that really stood out to me on this song, like not good wise, was the fact that they used the exact same glass breaking sound effect for about the third time in the album, and at that point I was like, all right, tone her back there, boys.
Get a second glass.
Go break a different glass. Like,
find a new window.
Yeah. Other than that, literally, like, this is a song that I expect to go to a club. Not like a club, but like a freaking concert, and there's like flashing lights and people are moshing around. That's the kind of song I expect. Like, that's the thing I feel from this.
Certainly. One of my favorite parts about this is that it actually smooth transitions in from the last track, which is something that I personally enjoy when albums do. I know some people don't, but that's just a personal thing that I like. It's like, oh well, look, they put the 2 extra seconds to make it feel like it's a continuity. And there's one little negative point that I didn't like. There's like a vocal thing kind of in the near the center of the track that's like a hoo type thing that happens, and it just comes out of nowhere and really blindsided me and just took me out of the moment with the track. I'm like, hold on, what the hell just happened there? That does not fit at all with the rest of the vocal themes going on in this. Sounds like well, like you said, a little bit of a hype track. Like,
yeah,
it's like the hype man, except the hype man is the rapper as well, so he's hyping himself up. Yeah, lyrically on this one, it seems to be about humanity actively seeking out to kill the better parts of themselves, and flirting with death in such a way like that. Like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna like actively avoid all of the good parts about myself, and I'm just gonna focus on being a lazy piece of shit. And let me tell you, I can relate to that.
I feel that one. Okay, this would be 8.
Yes.
Track 8, Feigning Familiarity. This is actually my favorite track on the album. I really digged this one.
I also dig this one. I haven't.
I think this one was the most interesting to listen to.
Yeah.
Like, aside from like the noise aspects of all the other songs, this one felt like it had a lot of technical things going on the whole time. So it really like spoke to me in that way.
Yeah.
Had a great use of like the breaks and the sampling throughout the entire thing, especially towards, I believe, the middle part where the audio quality like actually changes. Like they crushed it a little bit.
Yeah.
I really loved that. The whole tube compressor feel, like towards the end, was like the whole thing was just really well mastered and produced. Yeah. And I think it just made it more fun to listen to than some of the other ones that just felt like sensory overloads.
Yeah. Another thing that I'd like to note about this track is that it seemed to be the bassiest.
Yeah.
Like there was definitely more of bass drones and stuff like that happening on this track than any of the previous tracks when I had gone through the track listing. Also, I thought the clean vocals were excellent on this track, and definitely conveyed the message that Leo was trying to
I can always dig me some clean vocals when you can understand them. It's just that much better.
They carry good emotional weight.
Ooh.
And the lyrics on this dealt with how the vocalist felt his social life was very temporary, and all its social interactions also seeming very temporary. This includes things like sexual intercourse, which is directly mentioned in the song, and the narrator seems addicted to self-destruction and isolating himself from people and friends.
Wow, no wonder I dig this song so much. It's almost like it speaks to me.
Track 9 is titled Collared Kept, which is kind of a weird name. IMO. But one of the things that I noted about this is that the vocals were just kind of popping off, and to keep that balance, they had a very nice, solid bass just going throughout the whole track to keep the vocals kind of grounded, which is really a good thing.
Yeah, I had written down that it had some really good audio work in between mixing the vocals, the music, and the sampling. It was all like a really good variety.
Yeah,
they put it together. They put it together really well. One thing I didn't like though was I believe towards the bridge or the chorus. I don't remember exactly which one. There's a high pitched fill going on in the background, almost like a siren.
Yeah,
I really did not like that.
Yeah, that was a little grating.
It was not. That was the only part that was not mastered very well. It hurt my ears almost listening to it. But aside from just that one part, the whole song was really well put together.
Yeah, the samples were really well placed too. There's like some gunshots played in like the first probably 50 seconds of the track, and then around the midpoint there's a guy yelling, "Come on, you fucker," which is I guess
can you not love that?
Implying goading on the attacker. And then the ending samples are really kind of little bit disturbing with some woman screaming, "Why are you doing this? And what do you want?"
Yeah,
which was kind of unsettling, but again, that's kind of the vibe they're going for.
Following the common theme here.
Yeah, and as it kind of descends in probably the last 30-40 seconds, I remember hearing some glitchy sounds. Mm-hmm. Like it was almost like they took inspiration from some glitch artists and were like, you know what, we'll use
let's just shove that in there too.
We'll just use 30 seconds of it. I mean, might as well. We've thrown everything else in there, so you know. Let's see. Oh yeah. So lyrically, this song is basically just about the singers fall into crack addiction, and then like the issues and fallouts that were, you know, caused by that. Which is good because that means he knows he had a problem.
Yeah, accepting it is the first part. I definitely thought that Sean, the instrumentalist for the band, like really kind of popped off on this one. He really showed what he can do, especially on the next song too.
Oh,
the whole thing just comes together. Speaking of the next song, "If This Is What Passes for Living," the final song on the album.
And what a fitting title, given the themes and
honestly though,
and aptitudes of the rest of the album.
This one also had a seamless transition from the previous song.
Yes, it did.
Very, very nice. I also love those very much. It had some of the most unique vocal work throughout the whole thing too.
I would agree with that. Yes, it really showcased his diversity of vocal chops, and a lot of the drones on this track really felt almost like sirens in how they were and how were they used.
And they weren't as grating as the last one either.
Yeah,
it's like he listened to the last one, was like, that might be too much, and then decided to change it on the next one.
Yeah. So one of my favorite parts about this track is at around 3 minutes, all of the loud, really grating and noisy bits just drop off.
And you're talking about the transition, yes, that bridge.
The bridge transition, it's like a minute and a half, and it's just like...
It's got that piano in it.
Yeah, it's like digital piano and like some samples of duct tape and breathing and spray paint and somebody walking. And it just really sets up the end part of the track really, really nicely.
Yeah, I have that bridge and transition was like probably my favorite part almost of the entire album. Like just how completely different it was really set it apart. And even though this song itself doesn't really fit with that common theme of like the entire album led before it, of just like constantly grading you and like almost pushing you down, and then it kind of like really just let go for a little bit, that shocked me almost. And then it comes back and I'm like, oh, so good.
Yeah, it almost teases you with a little bit of, oh yeah, maybe there is a way out from this filthy, disgusting musical world we've built. Actually, no, we lied.
JK.
We lied. So lyrically, this track deals with essentially the narrator wanting to kill himself, which is very positive.
Very relatable.
Relatable, guys. That's relatable. Yeah, so I'd say in conclusion, I'd give this album a decent personal score. I'd say probably like a 4.5 or a 4 out of 5.
Okay.
There were issues with it, I would say. I would have liked more of kind of like the interlude in that last track, just kind of scattered throughout the album, just because it's such a punishing album that it really could have used more of those quiet moments as contrast, and also to give a bit of a break to the listeners.
Yeah, I did mine out of 10. I give it a 7.5, could even go up to 8. It's a really iffy in between the two. I don't listen to noise music, like I've said, but this really impressed me. It's got the guy's vocal work is incredible. The sampling and like electronic noises that Sean puts in are just phenomenal. And the song structure is like super unpredictable. It doesn't really follow the stereotypical intro, part 1, bridge, chorus, like break. Like it's just random almost. And I really liked that. The only main issues I had with the whole thing are just some of it felt too repetitious. Like almost some of the songs almost felt the same, if you could call it that. But then again, I don't listen to a lot of noise music. I don't know if that's common throughout it. Maybe it's just because of the sampling and like the constant grating on you. And then, like I said at the beginning, I just wish I could have heard the vocals better in some tracks. Some tracks they did really well with like keeping them balanced, but when he was really screaming, like filled with all that noise in the background, it was so hard to tell. But other than that, really dug the album. Yeah,
so we're looking at about, I suppose if you transfer my 4.5/4 out of 5 to a 10, we're looking at anywhere from a 7.5 to a 9, depending on the day.
On the day. How you're feeling.
If you're really feeling misanthropic, go to town. You know, if you really just want to hate yourself and everyone around you, this is the album for you.
And to completely go away from that feeling, we're moving on to the next album, my choice, Toe's The Book About My Idle Plot on a Vague Anxiety. This one was released in 2005. It is their debut album. They are post-rock, math rock, indie rock, I guess. Band from Tokyo. It's a J-rock band. Thank you very much. And I really dig this kind of music. This is the more stuff I listen to. And let's get right into it. The first song is Hangyaku Suru Fukie, or A Rebellious Landscape.
You fucking weeb.
It's a really short intro to the entire album. It's about, I think, 50 something seconds long.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it really gives off what the album's going to feel like throughout the whole thing, except it's the only part of the album where there's like an actual voice talking to you.
Yeah, and actual lyrics. They do use some vocals later on, but it's very subtle and it doesn't last very long.
No, we'll get to that when we get there. But other than that, like aside from the vocals, it really shows you what the album is gonna be, which is just kind of like a chill guitar and drum like main, just beautifully made album, I guess. I don't know.
One of the things about this track is that just kind of like the intro guitar kind of plucking thing. I think they looped it
Yeah.
It sounded like it was like a looped sample. The first time I heard it, it reminded me of the Wii theme music, unironically. Like, maybe that's just me, and maybe I'm just watching too many meme videos or something. But I just felt a really strong connection to the Wii on that first track. So track 2.
Yep. Kodoku no Hatsume, or the
invention of loneliness.
Yeah, if you want to be that kind of guy.
So this is going to be a common theme for me on this album, but the rhythm section for this group, it's just mind blowing.
I'm gonna throw it out there. The Kashikara Takashi, the drummer for this band, is the hard carry. This is his album.
Yeah, this whole album is his. Like, honestly, you could just cut away the guitars on a lot of these tracks. I'd listen
to this full 38 minutes of just straight his drumming.
Yeah, his drumming is phenomenal, and maybe it's recorded a little spacey, but I really enjoyed that because typically drums are way overproduced in a lot of albums, and this just sounded very organic, very earthy, and just so powerful. Oh my god, this drum work is just...
It definitely feels like they must have done something to the drums themselves, especially the snare drum, because it wasn't your typical ta. It was more like a ta.
Yeah.
Instead of, it wasn't as harsh.
It was more, a little dull. Yeah. Almost.
And it works really well, especially with how it contrasts. Especially for this song, the incredible guitar harmonics that play, because they have two guitarists who play at the same time and they work off each other. So them playing it and then the drums filling the whole background really fills the sound.
Yeah, it really works with the whole math rock aesthetic because the two guitarists are playing off of each other very nicely, and it's almost like two dueling hummingbirds.
Yeah,
that's a good way to put it. Good way to put the guitars. And then you've got the bass and the drums to keep it all anchored. And I cannot stress enough. I know we just talked about the drummers, but I cannot stress enough how well he clicks with the basses.
Yeah.
It just feels like interlocked and solid, and it's not going to move at all. It's just one functioning guitar piece.
Yep.
Guitar, bass, everything.
Piece.
It just fits so well. It's honestly impressive. I was blown away the first time I heard this track.
That's kind of a common theme throughout the whole album, so we shouldn't keep reiterating it the whole time. But
I'm not gonna harp on the rhythm section too much.
There are a couple times I'm gonna bring up the drumming again, but that's later.
Yeah, same.
One of the things I had about the invention of loneliness is that it felt like it drags on just a little bit too long towards the end. They have a whole part where it sounds like they end it and then they just keep going, and I think they could have just ended it and then been fine, but that's just a minor detail.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's actually in the later half of the track, there's very, very subtle vocal harmonies. You probably didn't hear it because it's for 2 seconds, legit 2 seconds. It completely threw me when I heard it. I'm like, excuse me.
Pardon-moi?
So yeah, there was that, which I thought was very interesting, that they just use a couple second clip of what sounded like vocal sampling. And then again with the conclusion, it does kind of fake you out at around probably just a little bit after the midpoint. I'd say. But I'd say it actually feels like a real conclusion to the track when the actual conclusion hits.
Yeah.
It does feel like a solid conclusion, which for me is pretty impressive for just a post-rock band in general, because if you listen to somebody like Explosions in the Sky or Russian Circles, it can be really difficult to try and ascertain where one track ends and the next one begins. And Toe does a really good job of actually showing you, okay, yeah, this is the end. We're going to cut it off here. So then track 3 is Tremolo and Delay, or Tremolo plus Delay.
I'll just say and. It makes more sense.
It does make more sense.
Because the song is kind of filled with tremolo and delay. So
I wonder who to thunk that one up.
yeah, right. I have written down phenomenal drum work. I won't go into it too much. We all know that this guy's pretty much the god.
Yeah, he's pretty much the Jesus on drums.
Yeah. I have written down that the whole progression, the guitar progression, flows really naturally. Even if it is kind of repetitious.
Yeah.
It still like pushes itself forward really well and flows together nicely. But aside from that, I don't really have too much on this song since it was kind of a shorter one too.
Yeah, it was a little short, and the one thing that I really noticed is that at the end of the track, there's like this really kind of groovy bass line.
Oh, the ending part is super nice.
The ending bass line really helps draw it towards the conclusion. And on a little bit of a negative note, this track felt less dynamic than track 2, which maybe they're playing more into the math rock roots of the band on this track rather than a post-rock band. But typically one of the hallmark traits of a post-rock band is every track is just, okay, we're going to build up for most of the track, and then at the end we're just going to drop it off. So I'm guessing this is more of a math rock type jammer than the previous one, but again, personal preference.
Yeah. We can just move on to the next song. This one's got a real long name. Muko Kishi ga Miru Yume, or A Dream That the Other Side Sees. I really love that name, both in Japanese and in English. It just sounds cool.
You absolute weeb.
Some of the guitar techniques in this song, I noticed, this is when they kind of start showing off their like technical skill.
Yeah,
there's a lot of slides on that they the two guitarists like play off of each other. It's almost like the guitars are going through like, I don't know if you felt it, but it was almost like there was a redemption arc between them.
A little bit.
Like there was a story being told just through the guitar work together.
Yeah, I would say that. And then there's actually, it felt like there were multiple movements.
Yeah, it felt like it was really trying to like tell something.
It felt like it was almost like this soundtrack to a very short play or something like that. And the first real transition into what I would suppose the second act would be happens at around 1:40, and it's very it really snaps your attention to it. It's like they transition to a bunch of I would say arpeggios.
Yep.
And that goes on for quite some time. Again, with this guitars telling a story narrative we've got running here. Until it hits around 2:30, and then there's some samples that play, and it just kind of whips itself into a fury for the final act of this piece. And I would say this was the whole track, just the way the guitars played off of each other, really felt like it resonated emotionally with me, which is pretty impressive for instrumental music. Typically, it's just kind of listless stuff. And I would say this is easily the most dynamic track in the track listing thus far.
Yeah.
And one of the more dynamic tracks in the entire track listing.
Yeah, there was a little bit I didn't like, especially that there was some electronic noise that ends up playing. I felt like it almost felt out of place with how, like, with how just acoustic everything was supposed to kind of be. But it's not anything that ruined the song for me. It just felt a little out of place. But
for sure.
Other than that, the whole thing really flowed together nicely and told a great story.
Yeah, and that was
without actually telling a story.
That was easily one of my favorite tracks on the album as well. That was a really dynamic piece.
Yep. And on to the next song, which is, speaking of favorite tracks, my favorite track. All I Understand Is That I Don't Understand.
Yeah, this is the name speaks to me. The name of the track really speaks to me. And again, this is another one of my favorite tracks on the album too. This is it's pretty wild.
I love the intro. The first time I heard this intro to this song, I was like, this is the stupidest thing I ever heard. And then I listened to it about 3 more times, and it grew on me more and more and more. And if you haven't, or you should have heard it, it starts with an off-sync, off-tempo intro where the guitars are playing like off of each other back and forth, and then the drum beat just is not even with them.
Yep.
It is just the weirdest sounding thing, and then all of a sudden it just clicks.
Yeah. And also the drum beat sounds like they aren't using the same drum kit almost.
Yeah.
It sounds very tinny or plasticky or something like that. And then when it clicks, the drum beat just goes
ham.
Furious. It's just wild. The rhythm section just comes in when they click and it just kicks major ass.
Yeah. There's a really good technique between the two guitars where it's left-right panning, where each guitar has an ear. And so the whole time you're listening to both guitars play off of each of your ears. There's the drums just totally rocking out. And then the only thing I had a real issue with this song is it felt like everyone had their place except the bass player. I really wanted the bass to have a bit more spotlight during this song because it would have added a lot. I think it would have added a greater dynamic to the whole thing, having the two guitars play off each other, the drums leading everything. And then if there would have been a section where the bass got to kind of show off their own thing, I feel like everything would have fit together really nicely. Not to say he didn't do phenomenal like in his own way, but I feel like in a lot of these songs, the bass player just gets kind of left on the back burner. And I feel kind of bad for him almost because everyone is just so technically skilled. He doesn't really get to show off what he can do.
Yeah.
So,
and going back to the left-right channels with the guitars, it made for a very compelling call and response dynamic between the two. And then again on the bass, well, the bass player is clearly not the highlight of these tracks.
Yeah, he's definitely holding them together.
Yes, he's definitely doing his job very well, which I think is commendable in its own
kind
way.
of the bass player role in general.
Yeah, like, okay, I'm gonna thump around. And
you guys go show off. I'll just sit here.
I'll just sit here and be the rock we need to keep us grounded, so the drum player doesn't just fly off into the sky with his sticks just flashing, and our guitarists don't get lost.
But yeah, that is all I understand. Is that I don't understand is definitely my favorite song, just based on the dynamics between all the instruments.
Yeah, there's a very, very good amount of dynamic change in there. Track 6 is titled C.
Not the word, the
Just
letter.
Capital C or lowercase.
Lowercase? It's one of the two.
Yeah,
I think it's lowercase. It's just the letter C.
they've got a very lowercase aesthetic going on.
So do I. So it's okay.
So one of the most important parts about this track for me is that it focuses much more on the lower register of the guitars. As a lot of the previous tracks, it's all about the high notes, Yeah,
lots of high harmonics.
Very, very high harmonics, and definitely some noodly sounding stuff. Whereas here, it felt like the guitars had more girth to them, a little bit more tone, and added just a little more overall color to the album, which I thought was very needed at that point. It was a good break from the very high sounds in the rest of the album.
This is actually, I would almost say, my second favorite song on the album. There's a close tie for my second, but this one's right up there. It's musically stunning. Like, this whole thing really puts itself together, the dynamic between the guitars.
Yeah.
The one guitar, like the main guitar you hear playing the melody, is almost like the backing guitar is trying to keep up with it. And it's like it's almost like they're playing like a game of chase or some kind of chase. It sounds super well or put together, especially with the drums and then the bass coming like through halfway, really trying to keep everything together. I think that's a really good common theme in this album, is keeping everything together.
Yeah,
like that bass player knows what the heck he's doing.
It sounds like at any moment, like if one thing fails, they're just gonna fly apart and there's gonna be debris everywhere. One of my favorite parts about this track actually is that the ending of the song kind of dies down into a sweet little guitar medley where it's just like the guitars are just playing off of each other, and there's like the rhythm section is cut out, and it's just a very sweet kind of laid back, like tender little guitar moment. Mm-hmm. That was just a sweet little nugget there.
I think one of the things I didn't like is, once again, I feel like they keep trying to add these like electronic aspects that they don't have to, because towards the end there's some extraneous electronic sounds that they just add in that don't really feel natural with the rest of the album. Like, even though they keep trying to do it, it doesn't feel like it fits, to me at least.
I would agree with that. I thought it felt pretty out of place.
Because they keep giving us these beautiful guitar, like rock steady drums and bass, and then all of a sudden they just throw in this unnatural synth sound that just irks me the wrong way. Not irks me, but just feels a little off.
Yeah, I feel like if they had actually strived to make space for these moments, they'd work out a lot better. But a lot of times it just feels like they're randomly thrown in on the top, and it just does not work out. So track 7 is Past and Language, and so there's a really solid build up on this song.
The progression,
yes, the progression.
Incredible.
It progresses until around 218.
Yep,
and then it just explodes.
Yeah,
and it's absolutely wild. It's one of the strongest build-ups on the album, I would say.
Yeah, there was a really good the melody change halfway through, like, kind of threw me for a twist there, because they build up the whole song feeling like it's going to follow this exact chord progression, and then they just kind of flip it on its heels, and next thing you know, it's something almost entirely different.
Yeah,
and it sounds super nice, except I think in the long run this is almost the most generic song out of all of them. Not generic in terms of like pop music, but generic in terms of like the progression that, even though it's amazing, is still kind of standard. And then when they flip, even though the flip is not the same as the beginning, it still feels like itself. If they had just cut the song there and added a second one into the track listing, it would have just been fine as its own song, I think. So it just felt like it could have been more, I guess, is what I was going for.
Speaking of issues that we take with this track, I hated the ending of this song. It's like an audio cliffhanger that just never gets resolved. It like the guitar plays like 2 notes of a chord and then it goes dead. And then it cuts to the next track and it doesn't start on the final note of the chord. And I'm like, okay, what the hell?
Yeah.
I feel like I've just been cock teased here and there is no appropriate response.
Release.
Yeah, it's that actually upset me the first time I listened through the album. I'm like, no, don't do this to me. There's got to be something else. But there was nothing else.
Yeah, no.
It never came.
No, it did not. Yeah, I think out of all the songs on the album, this one was probably my least favorite. Not to say that it was bad or anything, just the other ones were just so much stronger.
Yeah.
It's not really anything you can help. There's bound to be one.
Well, there has to be a worst album a worst track on any album.
Yeah.
They can't all be zingers.
Nope. Speaking of zingers, Music for You, the next track. This one is probably next to later on in the album Metronome. This is probably the most different song on the album.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I actually loved it.
Yeah, this is the one time when they use their electronic, like the things that they keep wanting to do in the other songs with the electronic effects, they use and do it amazingly.
Yeah, which is really kind of a shame because I feel like this was meant to be more of an interlude track, just like a bit of a palate cleanser to get you prepared for the rest of the insane drum work on this album.
Oh my
God. They use like some different percussion instruments. There's bells.
Yep, the muted bells, and then when they unmute the bells later on.
Yeah.
Like that's the first time you hear it, and it's almost like shocking.
Yeah.
Because you're when that song starts, you think there's gonna be guitars playing, because like every song is pretty much started with guitars, but instead you get this muted bell, and you're just like, wait, what the heck? And then all of a sudden, electronic effects start coming in. You've got glitch cuts, you've got reverb. It's like nothing you would expect. It's completely different than any other song that has played before it, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's really a good isolated piece of music on its own. I'd say the worst part about it is that it's too short.
Yep.
I could have done with a full 3-minute cut of that, and instead it's like a minute and a half barely.
Mm-hmm. They kind of play off this same feel later on, but they could have just kept going with this, and I would have been a happy little boy.
For sure, for sure. So, track number 9 is "I Do Still Wrong," which not the most grammatically correct.
Yeah, I
phrase,
can't tell
but
if they did that on purpose or not. I feel like it should have been like "I still do no wrong" or "I still do wrong" or something. Like,
yeah, I feel like a little bit was lost in translation there, but
they're fine.
yeah. Considering how much ass this track kicked for me, I'm okay with a little bit of mistakes there.
This is definitely the most upbeat song.
Yeah, it really just kicked out right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything else has like a little bit of guitar build up before things get wild, and this one was just like it was rearing to go. It was ready. It was just charging on out of there. And despite that, it still has decent dynamic tones and stuff like that. And I'd say this track felt the most math rocky.
Yeah.
Out of the entire track list, certainly more so than I want to say it was track 3 that I had said that.
I believe so.
Yeah, and it really plays to that strength. I'd say.
I'm not sure about you, but I got a really big feeling of like acceptance and then moving on as the song progresses. Because as the song goes on, it loses more and more of that energy that it started with, and to me, it feels like from the start. It's really coming out of the gate, really pushing it, and as it goes, it's like it's accepted. So I mean, there's no lyrics, there's no story, but it feels like something happened, and now it's moving on from that and becoming more of like what the rest of the album was. So it was a really good change of pace. It's not a bad thing. It's just I feel like the feeling of that acceptance and moving on thing worked really well for this song. I'm not sure if you felt it, but I sure did.
Yeah, it felt a little bit like a resolution type thing. Like a little bit of there was some resolution to the end of the song that wasn't a common thread throughout the rest of the album.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I definitely feel like even though there aren't lyrics, it's all these songs are still telling their own stories in their own way, and you just kind of have to make it up as you go, which is why like in the other song too, I felt like there was an arc or whatever. So yeah, maybe I'm just a little music nerd.
You're just too imaginative.
Yeah, that too.
So track 10 is Metronome, or however it's pronounced in Japanese.
It's metronome.
Oh,
metronome is in Japanese, so it's literally just metronome.
All right, well
this is the song that ties for second place with a C for me. I love this song.
I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with this song.
Yeah.
I have some issues, but I like a good portion of it. I really like how it opens with the acoustic
with the metronome and then the bell every fourth hit or whatever.
Yeah, the metronome and the bell and the acoustic guitars kind of playing off of each other.
Yep, they have that the left and right ear thing going on again too.
Yeah. This is actually the only track that I take issue with the rhythm section.
I have that written down too.
I think they were just too loud.
Mm-hmm. I have that exact thing written down. Drum and bass feel a bit sudden and harsh.
Yeah.
I feel like if they would have laid back, kept it in, but weren't as like pronounced as they wanted to be, the song could have taken off a lot more.
And that's actually kind of something I have here. I wish the rhythm was just pushed a tick further back in the mix.
Yeah.
Like if it had just been one or two volumes less, it would have been so much better, and I would have no gripes with this track at all.
This is also the only song that has like quote unquote vocals in it. There's a girl who just sings for about 5 seconds and then is never there again.
Yeah, it's just some very light, ethereal kind of vocals that are...
I don't know how I actually feel about that, being the fact that it's like the only time it's happened in the album and it's there so short. Like if they wanted to keep that, I would have wanted it for more of the song, maybe even had harmonies with it, but instead it's just there and out in a flash, and I felt like they could have done more with it. But it's not a gripe, it's just a thing that I personally would have liked to have seen more.
For sure.
Still a great song.
Yeah, it was a very interesting
It's got a good concept. I really like the calling it metronome and then having a metronome play the whole time.
Yeah. I just feel like
the drums.
Yeah. This is the only part where they were bad.
Yeah. I wouldn't even call it bad.
Yeah,
it was just the mastering could have been a bit different.
Yeah, the mastering and mixing could have been significantly better. So track 11 is Everything Means Nothing.
I feel that one.
Nice. So this is the first track that I noticed a tambourine on. Mm-hmm. And it's not like super pronounced, but
no, there was a lot of different progression in this final song.
Yeah,
and I feel like they really wanted to play around with the drummer's skill with that, because like halfway through the song you get just like a full 4 seconds of just clapping. Yeah, and I love that part too. It's a really nice transition, and I feel like they just wanted to do more, and they do it well.
Yeah.
My main gripe is that for a final song, it almost feels lackluster. Like
a little bit.
I think I was expecting more of like a pronounced, like, this is it, this is what we've built up to. But instead it was more just like it could have been put almost in the middle of the entire album and it would have fit just fine.
Yeah.
So I think I just wanted more of a concrete resolution to the whole thing.
And this song actually shares a similarity with one of the earlier songs, specifically Past in Language, and then it ends on a fucking cliffhanger.
There you go.
It ends on a cliffhanger, and I'm upset about it. I'm yelling.
Yeah, you clipped the audio.
Yeah, I did clip the audio because I'm upset and disgruntled about this. It's just 2 notes. It could have been a triplet.
Yeah.
But no, it was 2 notes and then nothing. And that's how the entire album ended. I feel like a lot of my gripes with this album could have just been like avoided if they had just been like, okay, we're going to wrap up our tracks
add
succinctly.
3 more notes. Come on.
Like, come on. I'm a little unreasonably upset about that. I even have a frowny face in my notes.
Oh, no. Yeah, no, I have that same gripe. This last song didn't feel like a last song.
Yeah.
Because in the Street Sects album, it literally, that last song is like, that is the last song. You know it, you feel it.
Yeah.
You don't even have to like listen to the entire album to know that song is a conclusion. On this one, Everything Means Nothing, while a name that resonates very well with a lot of things, does not resonate well with being the conclusion to this whole beautiful work of art.
Maybe it's supposed to be like that with the whole everything means nothing.
Maybe that was the whole point.
Like, yeah, you know, your conventional song structures and endings. Yeah, fuck that shit.
But I mean, if they were going to do that, I would have wanted something more than just like only playing 2 notes and then ending it. I would have wanted like a straight abrupt, like halfway through the a chord strum, just like,
yeah.
And then everything's over.
That would have even been a better conclusion instead of just being a cock tease.
Especially with a title like Everything Means Nothing. I feel like that could have worked really well, but they didn't, obviously. Can't change the past now. It's been 13 years. Get over it. So, my overall on this one, I give this an 8 out of 10. Pretty much, I think I keep it around almost the same as the Street Sects album, for entirely different reasons. I loved the percussion. This dude carried. This is his album. Yeah, like 100%.
It is. That's actually what I have on here. Like the drums were the best part of the album.
I think I made the comparison to myself, not to anyone else, but this felt like the drums for a lot of the songs. It felt like the drums were the melody and the guitars were the backing.
Yeah,
like he did such a good job being pronounced yet not overtaking anything that it felt like he was supposed to be the one up front. Like if they put him on a stage, he's smack dab in the middle, shove those guitarists in the fucking back. We don't care about him. I want to see this man. I want to see him up there.
Honestly, like if I could just listen to the drums on their own album, I'd probably do that because this guy is insane.
I know I was being mean to the guitarists, but they are very, very technically skilled. I think they played very well and they work together very well. The mastering and the sound design in the album was very nice. My biggest gripes are there's a really big lack of variance between all the songs. All of them almost all of them, not all of them, but almost all of them are just guitars playing off each other, drums carrying everything, and then the bass guy sitting in the background. I feel like there could have been more, and I think in their later albums they do work that off a lot better. But yeah, I feel like just some of it felt out of place, and it could have been a little bit more of a I guess more technically performed thing.
Yeah, for sure. And again, with the whole album kind of sounding similar, I think I would have taken more gripe with a lot of these tracks sounding kind of the same if the drums weren't so good.
Honestly.
Like if the drums were like maybe 2 ticks less, like 2 ticks worse, this whole album could have been a catastrophe. But instead, I'm giving this also an 8 out of 10.
Nice.
This is just, God, the drum work.
Popping that drummer on a dial, his natural skill being at 10. If he would have been at 9.8, this album would have been shit.
Yeah,
that's a lie.
Yeah, it would have been a lot worse than it was, just because he carries so hard.
Yeah, I really wish we could have heard more of the bassist. I know that's not a thing a lot of people typically like want, but I love it when a bass just freaking takes the lead and destroys and shows everyone what's up.
You don't need to tell me, I'm a bass player.
Ayo. I just really, because there are some tracks like I believe I think it's actually Metronome, where even though they are a bit harsh and like sudden, the bass player is like playing some really gnarly shit.
Yeah.
And like, even though it's in the wrong situation, I feel like he could have pushed that and made it something greater in a lot of the other songs too.
Yeah.
But
I would agree with that.
They did a really good job. I'm very proud of my boys out there in Tokyo.
Tokyo.
Yep. I don't know if we said, but both of these albums were debut albums for both of the bands. Their first official albums, at least. There was an LP, I believe. No. What was it? There was an album before that for Street Sects.
They had 2 EPs.
Yeah.
They had Gentrification 1 and 2. Gentrification 1, I want to say, is The Morning After the Night We Raped to Death.
Whew.
Yeah, it's pretty savage. I don't remember what Gentrification 2 is, but
yeah,
those are both pretty wild too. They're actually more crazy than the original album that we reviewed here. But
and Toe had a remix album before this one, which is not even original work, so we don't care about it. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. Eat My Ass remix album.
Cool. Well, Justin, I'm glad that we picked some pretty good shit.
Yeah, I think we picked some solid albums.
Especially because both of us kind of picked albums that the other one doesn't necessarily listen to.
Exactly.
I almost never listen to noise music or experimental, like industrial.
Speaking of things you never listen to, you want to talk about next week's album?
Next week's albums. Oh my gosh, I would love to.
So the album that I have for us to review next week is the Blitzen Trapper album, Destroyer of the Void.
Wow.
Just for a little bit of background, this is a country folk album.
Nice. Holy shit.
Yeah, so I'm really gonna take us from an 11 to a 0 here real quick when it comes to wild off the chain shit. So
so repeat that one more time for everyone at home.
Blitzen Trapper, Destroyer of the Void.
Wow, an incredible sounding album. And to roll off my indie rock, not industrial, that was noise. My indie rock hit, my album that I'm recommending is 12 Decembers by the band 12 Decembers, also their debut album under the same name. They are a little background noise between that, or why do I keep saying noise? A little background on those guys. It's just it's like a 5-6 person band who makes like half electronic, half indie rock kind of vocal pieces with some pretty nice guitar work going in. I used to talk to the singer, or one of the singers. They have like 3 of them.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's super nice. Good album. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Hopefully, maybe, probably.
I can't guarantee the same for my album.
I don't know, dude.
I don't know how you feel about folky country music. Probably not too strongly.
I don't mind folk all that much, but the more country it gets, the less intrigued I am. So
I don't blame you. Let's just put it this way. It's not radio country, so you're not going to have to worry about
radio country
that.
is just pop music. So.
We don't talk about radio country on this.
Yeah, and we never
podcast.
will, except for if I'm going to trash it. Looking at you, Luke Bryant, adding you, come on the podcast and fight me.
Luke
Defend
Bryant,
yourself.
More like trash Bryant.
Got him, dude.
Got him.
Destroyed him. Anyway, I think that's all we've got for this one. We did fairly well, I think, on going over the 2 albums. If there's anything we can do differently, how we should do it differently, let me know. Once again, I'm Trey Graciani. I go by Hisuya. I make music. If you couldn't guess, indie rock, indie experimental stuff. Not really the kind of shit you'll ever hear on this thing, but I do what I do.
I'm Justin Horn. You probably won't find my music stuff anywhere yet because it's not out. Hey,
got him.
But you can find me on exactly 0 social media platforms, and we'll have a great time. I'm sure I'll probably have to make some eventually, but
might.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
All of my social media stuff will be available. It's pretty much just the real Hisuya. It's not hard. You can find me just by tracking me down, going outside my window and calling my name. It's happened before. It'll happen again.
I do that a lot, actually, and that's how I got in contact with him.
Yep.
I was just a homeless man living in a bag before then.
That explains a lot, actually.
Anyway, we'll see you next time.
Yeah, this has been the Noise Report, and we'll see you guys next time. I love you.
You little babies.